Speaker. I am truly honoured to stand here today in the beginning of a new session on such an important piece of legislation. Bill S-201, an act to prohibit and prevent genetic discrimination. I thank the member opposite from Don Valley West for sponsoring this Senate bill that allows us to have active debate on this issue. I was first made aware of this piece of legislation during a visit from Ovarian Cancer Canada in May. The regional director from Saskatchewan and Manitoba, along with ovarian cancer survivor Lauren Richards, came to my office to discuss their types of cancers, their concerns, and what we, as members of Parliament and government, could do to help the thousands of victims of this terrible disease. Through our discussion, I was advised that ovarian cancer is the most fatal cancer for women in Canada. 2,800 women will be diagnosed this year, an additional 1,750 dying from this disease. Unfortunately, because of the symptoms of ovarian cancer, the diagnosis can be very confusing and undetected. Lauren advised that many physicians would diagnose this disease as a bladder infection. Meanwhile, the disease continues to spread. Because of this, the mortality rate is more than half of the women die within 5 years. The word for this is just brutal. Within my own office, my assistant Kim was diagnosed in 2000. Luckily, she is with us today as it was detected very early, and she is not just one of those statistics. Annually, Kim is now tested as they know of her medical history. But truly the question is, what can we do to help people like Kim and Lauren? Women who have this disease that in over 50% of the cases will die in 5 years. The answer is genetic testing. Genetic testing would not only provide an individual the sign of relief to find out whether or not they are a carrier of a mutated gene, but would also allow the individual to get the appropriate care and treatment to deal with the diseases. In 2015, former Justice Minister McKay tabled similar legislation prior to the fall election. This legislation was supported especially by the Jewish community, who disproportionately has a higher case of genetic markers. I was made aware of this during my meeting with Ovarian Cancer Canada, who advised me of their own colleague who, due to insurance concerns, will not have this testing done. As many of us in the House, when preparing for these speeches, we read a lot of news articles and studies to do with this issue. One in particular came to my attention from California. A young boy was transferred out of his school over his genetic testing. He had tested positive for genetic markers for cystic fibrosis, but did not have the condition. This is a clear case of discrimination. I believe when we look at this issue, we need to decide if this is about the quality of life and the betterment of our health decisions or the ability for one to discriminate. Currently, we are the only G8 country that does not have legislation to protect our citizens from genetic discrimination. Similar legislation in the United States, Australia, the United Kingdom, and New Zealand, to name a few, already have safeguards for their citizens. I do understand the concerns for insurance companies that have spoken out against this legislation, but in countries like the UK, they have come up with solutions and proposals. When looking at the impact to the insurance companies concerned with overinsuring oneself in order to have a large payout for their family when they pass on, they have found that overinsurance was not truly an issue, as over 97% of their policies fall below those considered limits. I do recognize that regulations of insurance companies are that of the province, but I believe that as a federal government, we can set the tone for human rights for across Canada. During my preparation for this speech, I read the different proposals forwarded to other governments by insurance companies, and rather than saying that this is a provincial regulation, we can work collaboratively to make sure that we are protecting Canadians. It is not just diseases like ovarian cancer and breast cancer, but people who have parents with Huntington's disease, heart disease, and many other diseases that this genetic testing would be very helpful for. There are so many uses of this type of screening that people make their choices for their healthcare needs. Even personally, I have a mother who has had a triple bypass, whose mother and her whole family members had a number of heart diseases, including my aunt, uncle, and great-uncles. Just a couple of years ago, my sister, a very active and fit 48-year-old woman at the time, was diagnosed with a heart condition and now has an implanted defibrillator. For me personally, this does cause concern. Do I have the same issue, or will I find like my sister did when she passed out in her own family's hallway? Will my daughters and son have this condition? Does my husband carry the gene for prostate cancer like his grandfather? As the leader of the Liberal Senate said in January of 2016, scientists here in Canada are unlocking keys to our DNA, and the results are revolutionizing medicine. As he indicated, just because someone has the markers does not mean that they will develop the condition. But just knowing can change so many things for that individual: their lifestyle, their diet, their exercise regime, and particular medications or perhaps surgery as necessary. An extremely popular example of this is Angelina Jolie. When she discovered she had a genetic disposition for breast cancer, she dealt with it by having a double breast mastectomy. As a mother caring for many children, the hardships have been somewhat relieved for her. This is an example of providing not only a peace of mind for her, but also for her children. As I indicated earlier, I had the opportunity to speak to an ovarian cancer survivor who was luckily diagnosed early. But we must keep in mind that misdiagnosis can occur, and do, especially in these types of cancers. The ability to save a life is crucial. Now, back in the discrimination part, there have been situations here in Canada where one has lost their job following positive test results for specific diseases. People have lost out on promotions and have come under scrutiny on their job due to their potential conditions. And it's not just employment and insurance. Due to positive results, families have not had the opportunity to adopt children. So instead of having the opportunity to raise a family, individuals go without. And once again, they may not even have the condition. They just tested positively for it. I guess, Mr. Speaker, it just does not make sense for us as parliamentarians to not support such an important piece of legislation. We need to set the bar, and we need to set that now. We as parliamentarians need to do what is best for Canadians, and supporting this legislation is just that. I urge all members to take an important stand and support Bill C-201, an act to prohibit and prevent genetic discrimination. I urge members to look at the people's health and to allow provincial regulators to find solutions to assist Canadians who have tested positively for gene markers. I urge Canadian researchers and our medical professionals to work together to encourage testing, especially in cases where there may be something that can be detected, and would allow Canadians to make their own personalized healthcare plans. I would truly like to thank Ovarian Cancer Canada for coming to my office and informing me of what we can do and how we can be part of the solution that will make a difference for all Canadians now and in the future. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.